Throughout human history, there have been eras when the world seemed to plunge into darkness, and the heavens foretold impending catastrophe. Such was the case in 793 AD, when ominous signs began to appear over ancient Northumbria, instilling unspeakable terror in the hearts of the local inhabitants. Enormous, swirling vortices tore through the sky, dazzling flashes of light pierced the gloom, and in the air, like embodied nightmares, the silhouettes of fiery dragons were seen. These omens proved terrifyingly prophetic. It was in that same fateful year, 793 AD, that ruthless sea raiders, hailing from the distant north, crossed the turbulent waters to reach the shores of England. Their objective was not merely wealth, but a complete disruption of the established way of life, a fact soon learned even by the Picts. These foreigners, like shadows, suddenly descended upon the defenseless monastery of Lindisfarne, a sanctuary of peace and knowledge located on a secluded island. For Christian Europe, this was truly its darkest hour, foreshadowing the onset of the true Dark Ages. The barbarians stormed the church, mercilessly laying waste to everything in their path with brutal plunder. Their unholy feet desecrated sacred places. They dug up altars without hesitation, stealing treasures accumulated over centuries. The fate of the monks was horrific. Some were coldly murdered, others taken captive and condemned to servitude, and some were even drowned in the cold sea waves. This was merely the beginning. For the next 300 years, the mere sight of a Viking longship gliding across the waves sent shivers of fear throughout Europe. This vessel carried a formidable crew, the greatest seafarers of their time, whose navigational skill was unparalleled, and the fiercest warriors, originating from the harsh lands known today as Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Young men from these northern regions ventured out to sea in search of their fortune, and their motivations were as diverse as the paths they chose. Some embarked on peaceful voyages to settle new, unexplored lands, expanding the boundaries of their world. Others became skilled traders, charting routes and exchanging goods in distant markets. And a significant number set sail with the sole purpose of pillaging, bringing destruction and terror. In their epic sagas, Scandinavian poets proudly recorded and undoubtedly embellished the exploits of these fearless warrior seafarers. Among them shone the names of legends such as Olaf the Fat, Ivar the Boneless, Eric Bloodaxe, and Thorfinn Skullsplitter. But there was one whose name inspired particular awe and dread, Egil Skallagrim. His deeds were so extraordinary and brutal that they were passed down from generation to generation for 1,000 years, becoming part of northern folklore. Egil's story began long before his birth. His father, originally from Norway, was forced to flee after choosing the wrong side in one of the many feuds, finding refuge on the distant, harsh island of Iceland. There, amidst the volcanic landscapes, an astonishing amount of driftwood was cast ashore by the sea. Using this gift of nature, Egil's father managed to build and successfully operate a farm where his people engaged in vital livelihoods, fishing in cold waters, hunting seals, and collecting wild bird eggs. It was in this severe yet self-sufficient world, around 900 AD, that Egil was born. He grew up in a small village consisting of only a few crudely built huts and longhouses. With his large family, he lived in one or two windowless dwellings, where the air was constantly clouded with acrid smoke from the hearth, and the walls were blackened with years of soot. Living conditions were extremely ascetic, leaving no room for excess or comfort. The contrast between this life and the more civilized world was striking. An Arab trader who visited Viking lands was shocked by some of the customs he witnessed. He described them thus: one who kills an animal as a sacrifice sets up a pole outside his house and hangs the sacrificed animal there for display. I have never heard such dreadful singing. It is like a growl coming from their throats, like the barking of dogs, only much more savage, chilling to the bone. And what is most terrible, if a weak child is born, they cast it into the sea without hesitation, so as not to burden the community with its upbringing. Egil, however, was by no means a weak child. From early childhood, like other boys, he enthusiastically played at war, imitating future battles. With awe and envy, he watched his older brothers and father embark on thrilling adventures each spring, which Egil could only dream of. It soon became evident that Egil would inherit not only his father's character traits, but also his appearance. He would be equally dark-haired and, by common standards, ugly. By the age of 3, he was already as large and strong as a 6 or 7-year-old boy, displaying incredible physical prowess. When it came to playing with other children, he was extremely difficult to handle. His strength and stubbornness were evident in everything. The saga recounting his life tells one particularly chilling episode. At the age of 6, Egil lost a competition to a boy named Grim. The humiliation was unbearable for him, unthinkable for his proud nature. In a fit of rage, he ran to Grim and, with all his might, buried an axe into his head, right to the brain. His mother, instead of being horrified, calmly stated that Egil possessed all the makings of a true Viking, and it was clear that, once he grew up, he should certainly be given warships. In the times when Egil was growing and developing, Christianity had not yet penetrated the deep fjords of the northern lands. Vikings still worshipped their powerful pantheon of gods, whose images were closely intertwined with nature and martial prowess. Mighty Thor rode with thunder across the sky, shaking it with his lightning, while beautiful Freya, goddess of fertility, brought life and abundance to the earth. These ancient deities would prove immortal, enshrined in the names of the days of the week we still use today. Thursday, Thor's Day, and Friday, Freya's Day. Warriors, before rushing into battle, invoked the protection of Odin, the All-Father and God of War, believing he guided their blows. A Viking who fell honorably in battle did not merely die. He joined the fallen heroes in Valhalla, a magnificent feasting hall in the otherworld, where eternal feasts and the glorification of earthly deeds awaited him. There he would feast and celebrate until the day he would fight and fall beside the gods in humanity's last, decisive battle, Ragnarok. His fate, according to their beliefs, was already predetermined, woven into the threads of existence. Egil spent his entire childhood wrestling, dueling, and hunting, tirelessly perfecting the qualities that made him a true Viking. He eagerly awaited the first signs of spring, when the ice receded and the cherished opportunity opened to set sail on a longship for his first great raid. One of his older brothers already had such a ship, and when he began recruiting men from nearby villages for an expedition, young Egil promptly joined him. In the spring, they meticulously prepared the large longship, and once all necessary arrangements were complete, they set off, venturing into the unknown. Each warrior's skill, strength, and endurance would be tested again and again during the long months spent on the open sea. Young Egil himself embarked on a voyage that was undoubtedly destined to change his entire life. The very word, Viking, has a deep meaning, signifying people from the bay. This indicates their inseparable connection to the sea and coastal areas. As shipbuilders, these people were unparalleled. Their engineering genius and craftsmanship were unprecedented. By the end of the 8th century, when the Vikings suddenly descended upon the unsuspecting monks at Lindisfarne, the Scandinavians had already developed a unique vessel that would forever change the course of history. Whether 60 or 120 feet long, the keel of each warship was carved from a sturdy, single oak trunk, ensuring incredible strength. Thanks to their broad hulls and remarkably shallow drafts, these ships could penetrate far up rivers, delving into the heart of foreign lands, and equally importantly, they could be beached almost anywhere, ensuring the element of surprise in attack and ease of retreat. Water, which for most peoples was a natural barrier keeping enemies at bay, became for the Vikings not just a path, but the main highway for invasion. For them, their vessel was more than just a construction of wood and sails. It was a living creature, endowed with a soul. They gave their ships majestic and formidable names, such as Long Serpent and Raven's Beak, emphasizing their predatory nature. And perhaps this is why the terrified Christian monks truly saw serpents and dragons flying through the air as these ships approached their shores. Overlapping planks of oak or pine were carefully nailed, fastened, or lashed to the hull, creating a strong and flexible structure. The seams between the planks were caulked with charred animal hair, providing additional watertightness. Thanks to this unique construction method, even in stormy seas or during torrential downpours, these amazing ships remained absolutely watertight. ready for any challenges the elements might present. Raising their sails, these majestic vessels achieved impressive speeds, reaching up to 10 knots. However, against the swift longships, there was virtually no reliable defense, as the Vikings were masters not only of the water element, but also of the art of sudden attack. A French monk bitterly lamented, "The Vikings seize everything they encounter." Soon, Egil, demonstrating his outstanding qualities, rose to command his own ship. Once his crew was fully assembled, they set out to plunder the waters of the Baltic Sea that summer. During long sea voyages, Egil and his crew passed the time playing various board games, among which King's Capture was popular. In their travel chests, the men also carried many personal items, and, importantly, their clothing. English women highly valued the Norsemen for their habit of combing their hair, washing every Saturday, and frequently changing clothes. After undertaking numerous raids and acquiring a significant amount of valuables, Egil sailed into the Baltic Sea, towards the shores of Courland, now known as Latvia. For 2 weeks, he and his shipmates peacefully engaged in trade. But just as suddenly, Egil changed course and sailed off to resume raiding. One day, Egil and his companions landed near the wide mouth of a river that bordered a vast forest. They decided to disembark and, dividing into 2 groups of 12 men each, took their weapons and plunged into the woods. Egil carried an iron sword over 3 feet long, known as Viper, an elegant yet deadly blade that brought death whenever it struck. It was light enough to be wielded with one hand, yet strong enough not to shatter against a shield. Like most Vikings, Egil valued this weapon above all else. Some swords were considered magical, created by dwarfs or gifted by Odin, the god of war. In poetry, the blade was lauded as battle's fire and blood's lightning. Poorer members of Egil's crew carried a short battle axe, simple but extremely lethal. Once, he swung his axe, which struck Thrain's head, splitting it to the jaw and scattering his back teeth. Warriors who could afford it wore an iron helmet, which, despite popular legends, was never horned. Wealthy warriors donned chainmail, composed of thousands of interlocking links, and every warrior carried a round wooden shield. The most terrifying Vikings, even among their own people, were the legendary berserkers, or bear shirts, so named for the bear or wolf skins they wore. These men were believed to be gifted by the gods with special strength that dulled swords and stopped arrows in flight. It is from these fanatical warriors that we get the word berserk. Egil walked through the forest with his 12 men. Nearby was a farm, and they headed towards it, bursting into the building upon arrival. He declared, "I wear a bloody sword and spear shaft. The raven is at my right hand when we plunder. We have made their farms bloody. At their gates grow the quick sleepers." The sleeping farmers were mercilessly slain in their beds, and their property plundered. Each man gathered his load and carried it out. Egil picked up a large jewel casket and, tucking it under his arm, walked with his men to the ship. Egil's ship continued its reign of terror. In late summer, they sailed to Denmark to ambush merchant ships and plunder wherever they could. This is what they did. They stole silver and gold treasures from defenseless monasteries and took slaves from coastal villages. However, having accumulated significant wealth, Viking raiders sometimes preferred to trade rather than fight. Treasures and slaves could be exchanged for Mediterranean wines, Eastern spices, and Persian leather. Their most prized ornaments were ceramic beads, which they kept on their ships. They bartered for them, strung them on a chain, and gave them to their women as necklaces. As skilled traders and daring seafarers, the Vikings left their indelible mark across Europe. Russia owes its name to the Scandinavian traders called Russ. Normandy was also settled by people from the north. Settlements abroad steadily grew. Vikings brought their families overseas and founded cities such as Kiev and Dublin. Traveling far to the east, Viking mercenaries formed bodyguards for the Christian emperor of Byzantium. Inside the Hagia Sophia Mosque in Istanbul, graffiti reads, "Halfdan was here." The boldest of all Vikings are believed to have been the first Europeans to cross the Atlantic, predating Columbus by 500 years. For Egil, the spoils of battle were abundant: silver, gold, and slaves. But instead of enjoying his bounty, he was again drawn by the sea and an insatiable urge to raid. As generations of Vikings descended upon the coasts of Europe, their reputation spread far inland. When the King of Scotland declared war on the King of England, the English Athelstan sought help from the very Norsemen who had been raiding his shores. Egil was one of his mercenaries. Since England was a Christian country, Egil first had to be baptized. Then, with 360 other Vikings under his command, he joined the English king. Athelstan challenged his opponent to a decisive battle. By the custom of those days, once a battlefield was declared for a king, he could not honorably wage war until the battle was concluded. At the appointed time, both armies engaged. Egil marched at the forefront, driving his men forward and swinging his sword Viper, advancing and cutting down people left and right. We led men into the thick of battle, pushing hard. Egil recorded such battles in verse. The chieftain weaves his web of fear. Each man receives his destined share. Blood-red sun, warrior's shield. He scans the battles. The outstanding commander Egil, who shrewdly mastered the art of war, demonstrated his skill when he struck the Scottish king's undefended flank. As a result of this powerful blow, the entire enemy column immediately wavered, then began to rapidly disintegrate, allowing the Vikings to raise a victorious cry, marking their triumph. However, by the twilight of Egil's days, the scene had changed. The northern warriors once again turned their gaze to the shores of England, but this time not in single vessels. They arrived not as allies of a monarch, but as conquerors, arriving in entire flotillas that could number almost 100 formidable ships, with the clear intention of subjugating foreign lands. For members of this harsh race of fearless warriors, the end of life often came prematurely, whether from treacherous disease lurking on campaigns or in the heat of fierce battle. A warrior's burial was traditionally performed with his trusty weapon, and sometimes with a beloved horse or other revered animal, which were believed to accompany him on his journey to the afterlife. His resting place was usually marked by stones skillfully arranged in the shape of a longship, a majestic vessel that, according to belief, was intended to carry the deceased soul to the other world, beyond earthly existence. Certain distinguished individuals were honored with monuments erected along ancient paths. These massive stones, inscribed with runic carvings, solemnly proclaimed the great deeds and valor of the departed. But the highest honor, available only to the most valiant and renowned warriors, involved burial inside an entire longship, which was lavishly supplied with all manner of riches, intended to ensure a fitting journey to Valhalla, Odin's halls. As for Egil, his demise came slowly, protracted over time. He himself described this state, uttering, "I flounder by the fire, begging for mercy. Time passes agonizingly. I am alone here, though blind, I melt." Ultimately, the entire Viking way of life met its inevitable decline. Those who were once their victims gained strength and influence, and old antagonists became allies. Even blood relatives, such as the Normans in Normandy and the Danes in Denmark, began to seem alien to true representatives of the old world, like Egil. By the 12th century, Christian Europe, like a mighty river, silently and inexorably absorbed this once formidable race of warriors, dissolving them into its embrace. With the final departure of the Vikings from the historical stage, the silhouettes of dragons, their legendary longships that once cut through the seas like winged monsters, were no longer to be seen in the heavens. And the need for Christian peoples to continue whispering their 300-year-old prayer for deliverance ceased. From the fury of the Northmen, O Lord, deliver us.